Hello, I'm Sasha of Sasha Makes Cards, and today I'm here with Kraftin Kimmie Stamps for a little Throwback Thursday featuring the Pond Pals stamp set. Now, this stamp set features 4 main froggy images, as well as a couple of accessory images and the sentiment sending you a note to, of course, match the musical theme going on with the stamp set. Now, as I was planning out this card, a few different ideas crossed my mind. I could, of course, go with a more clean and simple look. I could create a scene featuring all of the frogs in a little froggy band playing all of their instruments. That would be a really fun design, especially on a slimline card. However, I decided to go with a scene colored using alcohol markers. I'm going to be using Ohuhu alcohol markers and the stamp of the frog playing the horn floating on a log down a river. Now, since this is going to be a colored scene using alcohol markers, I decided to do something a little different than what I normally do. I decided to grab my sketchbook and actually do a more comprehensive colored sketch of the scene. Usually what I do, as you can see with this page here, are little thumbnail sketches that really make no sense unless you sketch them. They're really bad, they're really tiny, and you have no idea unless you have no idea what's going on in them. For this one here, the background is supposed to be a map. You don't get map with what I sketched out. It doesn't make sense, but I sketch out really badly a little thumbnail sketch, and then I'll create a bullet list with possible techniques I'm going to use, colors, the products I'm using. However, for this particular card, and since it is an alcohol marker colored scene, I decided to do something a little bit more to scale. So I sketched out a rectangle in my sketchbook measuring a US A2 size card that's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, stamped on the image that I was going to be using for this card, and very quickly sketched out the scene. I kept it very loose, first sketching it out with a pencil, very roughly, figuring out what I wanted to include in the scene, where everything was going to go. Then I pulled out some different colors of alcohol markers. Had no idea if these were going to be the actual colors I used. I just grabbed some and started, again, very roughly coloring the scene. Doing this more comprehensive sketch is great for a lot of reasons. It's great for planning out your card. It allows you to plan it a bit better. It allows you to visualize it a bit better. However, if you're somebody who doesn't often color alcohol marker scenes, it's also great to provide a bit of a confidence boost. Sometimes when I'm planning these scenes out of my head, I don't even know if realistically I can recreate it how I want to. Sometimes maybe I bit off a bit more than I can chew. So doing a sketch like this allows me to kind of fully flesh it out and figure out exactly what I can do and how I want to do it. Another thing, doing even just a small thumbnail sketch, but a more comprehensive sketch like this, it allows you to very easily test out the colors. I often, when I'm coloring, I'm trying to figure out which colors to use, especially if I'm almost done coloring a stamped image that I've already cut out. Maybe I'm on the last color to use, and then I start coloring, and I'm just thinking that's not at all the color I want it. And I have to redo it. This allows you to easily test the colors so that when it comes time to creating your actual card, coloring the actual image, the colors, you already know that they're colors you'll like and will look good with what you're planning. I started making the card by first stamping the frog image that I had already decided on earlier onto a piece of alcohol marker friendly cardstock. For this, I'm using 100-pound Hammermill cardstock, measuring 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, which of course is the size of a standard US A2 size card. The ink I use to stamp is an alcohol marker friendly ink. It is the Honeybee Intense Black ink, which is actually a new alcohol marker friendly ink that I've been trying out. Well, it's not new, but it's new to me, and I've been quite enjoying it so far. I really enjoy trying out new products, especially inks, so to find a new alcohol marker friendly ink to experiment with and kind of compare to my usual go-to, it's always kind of fun. After stamping the frog image, I quickly sketched out the same scene that I had already created in my sketchbook, just using a pencil, sketching it out very lightly, making sure I reference what I had already created, and erasing any lines that were just a little bit too harsh. You don't have to worry too much about the pencil markings, just make sure you don't go too heavy with the sketching, but it is pretty easy to erase even after you start to lay down color with the alcohol markers. Something I really like using for this step is a kneaded eraser. Of course, with an eraser, you can erase the sketching lines lightly, but a kneaded eraser is just kind of nice because you can just roll it over and just take up a little bit of the graphite, not all of it. However, I couldn't find mine when I was sketching this, so I just use a regular eraser. Now, the coloring process is something I always don't quite know how to commentate on, if you will, because for the most part, I'm kind of just doing my own thing when it comes to coloring. I don't know if what I do is correct. I don't know if it's the proper technique. I'm just kind of doing my own thing. But what I'm doing when it comes to scenes, actually, usually when I color just stamped images, I start from my darkest color and I work to my lightest color. However, when I'm coloring a one layer scene like this, I kind of do both. I work from the lightest color to the darkest color, and I'll work from the darkest color to the lightest color. I kind of alternate between the two, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but to me it does. It just depends on the area that I am coloring. For example, for the water, I started with my lightest color, working in some of the darker shades. I also did that for the little bit of dirt going along the river to kind of create that little river bank. To me, it kind of helps lay out the shapes, block in the color, and then you can add in the dark color, and then go back in with the light color, which you can see me alternating between the same shades over and over again to kind of build up the colors, to build up the layers, a nice little gradient, if you will. As I'm coloring using the alcohol markers, to give a better idea of my coloring process, I put the cap on my work surface with the color facing up so that you can actually see which colors I'm working with. Sometimes I forgot to place it down because usually when I color, I hold the marker in one hand and then the cap in my other hand, or I'll hold it in the same hand. So I tried to make sure that I placed the marker cap where you could actually see what color I was working with, and then that way you could see just how many times I'm going back and forth between colors and kind of get a better idea of how I am blending out the colors using the same 2 or 3 shades. In addition to using the alcohol markers, I also like to use some pencil crayons or colored pencils depending on where you're from. I do this a lot with colored images. For this, I like to use the Prismacolor Premier colored pencils to add in a few extra details, if you will. Sometimes it's to add a bit more color or depth to whatever it is I'm coloring. Sometimes it's just to blend out the colors a bit more. But this is something I do quite often, and I did it for this scene as well, and also the frog image, which you will see. The nice thing about the pencil crayons is they're a bit more forgiving than the alcohol markers in that you can erase them if you need to, which is always nice. Sometimes it will leave a little bit of color behind if you're putting it on white. Say if it's a black pencil crayon on white, that might be a little harder to erase, but if it's, say, a green pencil crayon on green marker, it's a lot easier to erase and fix any mistakes that you make. Now you may notice, especially as I am nearing the end of the coloring process and the frog's been colored and everything that needs colored is getting colored, when I'm coloring, I go outside of the lines quite a bit. Or I miss sections. Just looking at it now, there's a little section of white under the frog's leg that should have been water. I do go back in and fix that, but I tend to go outside of the lines more than I would like. So it might look a little messy now. I do clean it up near the end and before I officially finish off the card. My personal favorite trick for cleaning up any color that goes outside of the lines is using the colorless blender and a white jelly roll pen. I don't use the colorless blender for blending. I honestly don't know how you're supposed to even use it for blending, but what I do is I just go over any unwanted areas of color a few times with the colorless blender. It helps to fade the color, and then to make it even whiter, I use a white jelly roll pen. This works a lot better if the image is fussy cut out, and then the white jelly roll pen just makes the border nice and white, but it works just as well on this card as well. To finish off the card, I created a super simple sky using just a little bit of ink. I didn't even dip into the ink pad to get more ink for the brush. I just used some of the Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink that was already on the brush. Very lightly created a sky. You can, of course, use alcohol markers. I prefer the ink. And then stamped the sentiment, sending you a note onto the card, glued it onto a card base, and then it is complete. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you liked this video and that I did an alright job explaining my thought process and how I color. Be sure to check out the description for links to my social media, a link to the Kraftin Kimmie Stamps website where this stamp is available to purchase, and I will see you next time.